The carriage rocked hard to the left, and Cressida Merriweather caught herself against the leather squab with both hands before she could be thrown into the opposite seat. Rain hammered the roof with a sound like fistfuls of gravel being flung at the boards, and the horses screamed once, high and thin, before the coachman's voice cut through the weather and brought them back under rein. Across from her, the Duke of Ashmore did not so much as lift his eyes from his book. "We shall be overturned," she said. "We shall not." "How can you possibly know that?" "Because the road is straight for another mile, and because Harmsworth is the best coachman in the county. The carriage will hold." "Your certainty is astonishing." "My certainty," he said, turning a page with deliberate composure, "is the only thing keeping you from hysterics, Miss Merriweather. I would advise you not to discourage it." She drew a breath so sharp it hurt her ribs and turned her face to the window. There was nothing to see but water. Sheets of it, running down the glass in such unbroken streams that the landscape beyond had been reduced to smears of rust and bronze and sodden gray. Somewhere out there lay the road back to Merriweather Grange. Somewhere out there, she had believed only 2 hours ago, lay her brother's warm study and a supper prepared by a cook who knew she hated mushrooms. Now there was only the rain, and the Duke, and the particular misery of traveling 15 miles in the company of a man who had spent 7 years treating her as one might treat a chair that occasionally expressed opinions. She had been 21 when Tobias first brought Alaric Vane home from Cambridge. The Duke had been 23 then, tall and correct, and possessed of eyes the exact shade of tarnished silver. He had looked at her across the dining room at Merriweather Grange and said, "Your brother has spoken of you often, Miss Merriweather." I find that he understated the matter. And then he had said almost nothing else to her for the rest of the visit. Over the years that followed, she had learned that this was simply how he was: cold, self-contained, civil to the precise degree that civility required, and no further. At balls, he bowed to her once and danced with her never. At her brother's dinners, he inquired after her health and did not appear to listen to the answer. She had decided, somewhere around her 23rd year, that she would not waste another moment of her life wondering what the Duke of Ashmore thought of anything. And now here she was, alone in a carriage with him, because her mother had died in the spring, and Lady Honoria Penrose had written, kindly and unprompted, to invite her for a fortnight at Penrose Court, and because Tobias had been detained in town on a matter of railway shares, and because Alaric Vane, passing through on his own return from his sister's estate, had offered to see her home. Offered was perhaps too warm a word. He had announced it in the same tone he used to request that a footman close a window. "You might," she said, "have waited another day. Your sister said the post-rider warned of weather coming in from the west." I did not wish to wait another day. Evidently not. My business in London will not keep. Neither, it appears, will the road. He looked up then, only briefly, long enough for her to register, with the usual treacherous jolt, that his eyes were still the color she remembered, and that the small, pale scar along the line of his jaw had not faded in all the years she had been trying not to notice it. "Miss Merriweather," he said, "if you wish to insult me, I must advise you that you are out of practice. Your brother does it far more efficiently." "My brother," she said, "has the advantage of loving you. I do not." For an instant something flickered across his face, gone so quickly she could not name it. Then he returned to his book. The carriage struck something then, hard and pitched. She did not have time even to cry out. The world tilted. Her shoulder left the squab, and she was flung forward across the space between the seats, with no hand to catch herself. A hand caught her all the same. 2 hands. They closed around her upper arms with a strength that did not ask permission, and for one long, astonished second, she was held half suspended above the Duke's knee, her loosened bonnet brushing his cheek, her breath stopped in her throat. "Steady," he said, very close. She could smell the rain in his coat. She could feel the heat of him through her sleeves. She could see, at a distance of perhaps 4 inches, the fine grain of the scar along his jaw, and the faint, darker ring at the outer edge of his iris that she had never been near enough to notice before. "Release me," she said. He did, at once. She retreated to her own seat with more haste than dignity, and busied herself with the ribbons of her bonnet, so that she would not have to meet his eyes. Her hands, she discovered, were trembling. Whether from the lurch or from something else entirely, she did not care to examine. The carriage had stopped. Outside there were voices, Harmsworth and the footman, arguing over the noise of the rain. She heard the word, bridge. She heard the word, gone. The Duke opened the window and leaned out. "Report. Bridge at Lyle's Crossing is away, Your Grace. River's come up 3 foot since morning. We've turned off Blackmore Road, and there's a tree across the way behind us. We're between, sir." Between. No way forward, Your Grace. No way back. Alaric Vane closed the window with a quiet, deliberate click. He did not look at her when he spoke. "There is an inn," he said, "a mile hence. Harmsworth, to the Hollow Bell." The Hollow Bell wasn't an inn so much as a protest against the weather. It crouched at the side of the old post road, with its shoulders hunched against the wind, and its lamps burned smeary yellow behind windows that had not been washed since Michaelmas. Rain had turned the yard into a black pool. The ostler who ran out to take the horses wore a sack tied over his head in place of a hat. Cressida descended on Alaric Vane's arm because there was no dignified alternative. The water closed over the tops of her half-boots within 2 steps. Inside, the common room was packed to the beams. Merchants, drovers, a parson with a cough, a pair of spinster sisters guarding a wicker basket between them, and 3 very wet cavalry officers crowded about the only fire. The innkeeper, a broad, ruined-looking man with a burn scar down one wrist, took one glance at the Duke's greatcoat and another at the Duke's face, and said without being asked, "We're full, sir. I've got 1 room above the tap, and it's the size of a press. That's the whole of my stock tonight." "We will take it," said Alaric Vane. Cressida's head snapped round. "We will not. The alternative, Miss Merriweather, is the common room and the drovers. The alternative is another inn. There is no other inn this side of Lyle's Crossing, and Lyle's Crossing is beneath 4 feet of river. Do try to follow." She would have struck him if the innkeeper had not been watching them both with the particular interest of a man who earned half his income from gossip. She saw Alaric see it at the same moment. She saw his whole face change. It did not soften. It simply arranged itself into something she had never seen on him before, a thing that looked, unsettlingly, like warmth. "Forgive my wife," he said. "The journey has tried her." The word landed in her chest like a dropped plate. "Newlywed, sir?" said the innkeeper, suddenly affable. "A fortnight," said Alaric, taking the key. "We were returning to my estate when the bridge gave way. We had hoped to be home tonight." "God bless you both. I'll send Maggie up with hot water. The room's at the end of the passage. Mind the step." Cressida did not trust herself to speak until they were halfway up the stairs. She waited until the turn, where the boards groaned loudest and swallowed any sound, and then she rounded on him so sharply he was forced to stop 2 steps below her. "Wife. Miss Merriweather. Wife. Would you rather I had named you my sister, to a man who has already seen us arrive alone together in a carriage bearing my arms? Would you rather I had given him my true name and yours, and handed him the tale to sell to the next London paper that sends a man through this village?" He kept his voice so low that only she could hear it, but he did not blunt it. "I have told no lie that cannot be unsaid in the morning. By dawn, this is a story about a stranger called Vane passing through with his wife. By dawn, it is nothing. The moment you give him our real names, it becomes a story that ends you." She stood 3 steps above him, her breath coming short, and found she could not answer, because he was right. And she hated him for being right, almost as much as she hated herself for having no better plan. "Very well," she said. "Husband, thank you. Do not thank me. I am keeping count." The room was exactly as promised. One bed, narrow, pushed against the far wall, a washstand, a chair, a fireplace that had not been swept since the autumn before, and that smoked at once when Alaric laid a fire in it. There was a single window, and it looked out onto nothing but rain. She sat on the edge of the chair because she could not bring herself to sit on the bed. "I shall take the floor," he said, without preamble. "You shall not. You are a foot taller than the room. I have slept on worse. I am certain you have not." "In the peninsula," he said, surprising her. "I slept for 6 nights in a shepherd's hut with 3 other officers and the shepherd's dog, and we were grateful. This is a palace. You were in the peninsula for a little time, before my father required me to come home." She had not known this. She had known him for 7 years, and she had not known this. It struck her, suddenly and unpleasantly, how little she knew of a man whose presence she had made a personal study of avoiding. She did not answer. He knelt and coaxed the fire, and she watched the line of his shoulders in the smoky light, and tried to remember that she despised him. A soft knock at the door, a thin girl with a jug of hot water and a tray. Bread, cheese, a pot of dark soup. The girl would not meet Cressida's eyes. "Thank you," Alaric said, and took the tray from her. And then, just as she was going, he said, "Your master's boy. I heard him coughing as we came in. Is he ill?" "It's the croup, sir. 3 nights now. We've had the surgeon, but he's only a farrier that does folk for a penny. Mother don't sleep." Alaric reached into his coat and withdrew something Cressida could not see, and pressed it into the girl's hand with the quiet finality of a man closing a book. "Send to the physician at Westvale in the morning. My name is sufficient. Do not let your master refuse him on pride." The girl stared at what lay in her palm, and then at him, and then she curtsied so deep she nearly struck her forehead on the jug and fled. When the door had closed, Cressida did not move for a long time. "What?" she said at last. "Did you just give that girl?" "Coin enough for the physician and his journey, and a direction." "You do not know her?" "I know the croup. I had a younger brother once who died of it. The physician at Westvale would have saved him, had we known to send." He said it in the same tone with which he had told the coachman to turn toward the inn. Matter of fact. Closed. As though it had cost him nothing, when she could see, now that she was looking, that it had cost him something she did not yet have the measure of. He rose from the hearth. He did not look at her. "Eat," he said. "You have not eaten since breakfast. I shall be downstairs an hour. Lock the door behind me. Open it only for my voice." He was gone before she could ask what brother. What younger brother? Whose? She sat alone in the small room with the smoky fire, and for the first time in 7 years, she understood that she did not know Alaric Vane at all. The fire had settled into a real burn when he returned, and the room had begun, by small degrees, to be warm. Cressida had eaten a little of the bread, and drunk most of the soup, and was standing at the window, watching the rain in the yard, when his step came on the landing. 3 knocks. Then her name, quiet. She opened the door. He had taken off his greatcoat somewhere below, and his hair was damp from the stairwell. He carried a second blanket over one arm, thin and patched, and plainly all that could be had. "For the floor," he said. "I told you, the floor is absurd. And I told you, I have slept on worse. Miss Merriweather, I should prefer to have this argument only once. Then do not have it at all. Take half the bed. It is wide enough if neither of us behaves like a fool." She had not meant to say it. It came out of her like something she had been holding at a distance with both hands, and had, for a second, let slip. He went so still that for one alarmed moment, she thought the lamp had gone out. "Miss Merriweather, do not say my name like that." "Like what?" As though it were an accusation. He set the blanket down on the chair with great care. He did not look at her. "I shall sleep on the floor tonight," he said. "We will discuss the rest tomorrow." She let him have that. She took off her wet boots because there was nothing to be done about them, and sat on the edge of the bed, with her stockinged feet tucked beneath her. The smoke from the fire smelled of oak and old rain. From somewhere beneath them, below the floorboards, came the low, ragged thread of the innkeeper's child, coughing. "How is the boy?" she asked, because she could not bear the quiet. "Sleeping. They have given him a steam." "Your Grace?" "Alaric." She stopped. "I beg your pardon. While we are here, my name is Alaric. Yours, I am told, is Cressida. Unless you wish to explain to the scullery girl why your husband calls you Miss Merriweather." She opened her mouth. She closed it. She felt heat climb her throat in a way she intended to blame on the fire. "Very well," she said. "Alaric." He inclined his head. "May I ask you something?" "You will ask it whether I permit you or not." "Why are you marrying Lady Sibylla Pembridge?" He had been unlacing one of his boots. He did not stop, but something in the movement altered, the way a horse alters gait when it has felt a pebble. "Because my father and her uncle decided upon it." "Do you love her?" "No." The speed of it surprised her. "Does she love you?" "No." "Then why?" He set the boot aside and set the second beside it. When he finally looked up at her, his eyes were the color she remembered from the dining room at Merriweather Grange, the first night she had ever disliked him. And they were, she discovered now, not cold at all. They were only very, very tired. "Because there are arrangements, Miss Merriweather, that a man in my position is required to make without consulting his preferences. Because my father has spent 30 years building a thing he intends to leave intact. Because Lady Sibylla requires my name, and I require her family's silence on a matter that does not concern you. Does that satisfy your curiosity?" "No." "I did not suppose it would." She should have stopped there. She knew she should. "You speak of duty," she said, as though it were a thing a person can hold in the hand. "Is it so simple for you?" "It is not simple. It is only required. And if something you wanted crossed the path of what is required, then I would stand aside. Have you ever?" "Yes." He did not look at her when he said it. She felt the word land somewhere inside her chest, and she did not know what to do with it. He moved then, as though the silence were harder to hold than the chair, and took up the kettle and poured himself water. He did not drink. "Tobias wrote to me," he said, 3 years ago. She froze. "About you?" "I beg your pardon." He was troubled. "You had refused a man he thought you ought to accept. Mr. Linhope, I believe. A respectable match. Your brother was worried you had refused him for the wrong reasons and would regret it. He asked me what I thought." She could not breathe. No one was supposed to know about Mr. Linhope. No one outside her own family, her own mother, her own bedroom, where she had wept for 2 nights before telling her brother no and begging him to tell no one else. Her mother had been alive then. Her mother had put a hand to her hair and said that if she did not love him, she must not take him, whatever anyone would have preferred. And Cressida had held that small, fierce hand in her mind for 3 years as one of the last tender things anyone had ever given her. "What did you tell him?" she said. He looked at her now, directly, without kindness. "I told him that his sister was not a fool and did not require a husband to improve her." "You told him that?" "I told him that." Her eyes were very hot. She turned them to the fire so that he would not see. "You have had opinions about me then," she said. "All these years." "I have had opinions about you, Miss Merriweather, since the first evening I ate at your brother's table." Downstairs, at that moment, the cough of the innkeeper's child broke into a full fit, and underneath it, further away, beneath the rain and the wind and the low complaint of the house, came a new sound. A sound Cressida had not heard properly until now. A deep, running roar. Water. Much more water than had been there an hour ago. A bootstep on the stairs. The innkeeper's voice at the door. "Your Grace, forgive me. The beck has burst its banks at the bottom of the yard. The road south is under. Harmsworth sends word we shall not move the carriage for 3 days. 4, perhaps. It is the worst weather in living memory, sir." The door closed. Alaric Vane did not look at her. "Well," he said, Cressida came down the inn stair alone the next morning, because Alaric had risen before it was light and gone to see to the horses. The fire in the common room had been built up since the night before, and the boy who ran between the tables wore a coat too long for him and a face almost ruined with recent weeping that had lately stopped. Cressida understood that this was the innkeeper's boy, and that he was well. She took a table in the corner and ordered tea and bread, and was looking into the pewter teapot when a voice said, "Mrs. Vane, if I have the honor of it." She looked up. A man of perhaps 29 stood beside her table with his hat in his hand. Fair as ripe wheat. Eyes of a cold water blue. He wore a dark coat excellently cut, and boots polished since their drying, and he was smiling at her with great kindness, and for the instant before she recognized him, there was no reason to feel uneasy. "I beg your pardon," she said. "Forgive me. We met last Tuesday at Penrose Court, very briefly, as I was arriving, and you were at the pianoforte. Hartwell. Crispin Hartwell. I was afraid you would not remember." She did remember. Faintly. A tall, fair man introduced by Lady Honoria across the drawing room as she was going up to dress for dinner. "Baron Hartwell. Just come into the title. Very charming," Lady Honoria had said later. "One ought to be kind." "Lord Hartwell," she said, and began to rise. "Please." "Do not." "May I?" She could not say no without calling down the notice of every table in the room. She inclined her head. He sat opposite her, with the ease of a man who had been welcomed. He did not glance about to see who watched. He did not need to. He was of a kind that knew its reception already. "I was distressed to hear you had been caught on the road," he said. "Harmsworth at the door told me the whole of it this morning. A bridge away, a tree behind. One would think Providence itself had determined you should be delayed. And how wonderful for a bride, to be stranded in a warm inn with a new husband." She had been lifting the cup. She set it down again very carefully, because her hand had gone cold. "You are kind," she said. "I had not known," he said, with an air of very gentle confusion, "that His Grace of Ashmore had married. Lady Honoria said nothing of it, and it was but 3 days ago I took my leave of her. I only wonder whether the announcement had not yet gone out to the papers, or whether it was a quiet ceremony." Time was doing something peculiar inside her chest. She was aware of the common room, the drover laughing at the long table, the bacon hissing in the skillet, from a great distance. "It was very private," she said. "Ah, a matter of family. Of course." He lifted his own cup and drank from it. He did not take his eyes from her face while he did so. She felt as she had once felt as a child, caught by a governess in a lie, and she hated being made to feel it. "Lord Hartwell, Mrs. Vane, I think I have forgotten something I was to say to my husband. Will you excuse me?" "Of course." She rose. He rose with her. At the foot of the stair, he bowed over her hand, and said, quite distinctly but very kindly, "May I say, whatever it is, be easy. I am an old acquaintance of your brother's, Miss Merriweather, and I am a man of discretion." Her own name in his mouth hit her like a thrown stone. She got herself up the stair without running. She got the door of their room open and closed it behind her, and only then, with her back against it, did she permit herself to breathe. Alaric was at the window. "He knows," she said. "He knows everything." Alaric turned. Something in his face went very still. He was a man who, when shaken, grew fractionally quieter, as water draws still before a stone is thrown into it. And she recognized now that this was what shaken looked like on him. "Who?" "Hartwell. Baron Hartwell of Crowhill. He was at Penrose Court the last week of my visit. He came to my table. He called me Mrs. Vane, and then he called me Miss Merriweather. He said he would be discreet." "Did he?" Alaric's voice was perfectly level. "That was kind of him." He crossed the room. She had never seen him move like this, with no waste in the step. He took his greatcoat from the peg. "What are you doing?" "Going down." "Alaric, please do not make a scene." He stopped at the door with his hand on the latch. He did not look at her. When he spoke again, his voice had gone lower still. And though he addressed the door she understood. Her. "I shall not make a scene, Cressida. I shall make a conversation. Come with me. I do not wish you above stairs alone while he is below them." She followed. Down the stair. Across the common room, under the eyes of every table that had heard the word discretion floated at the foot of the stair. Crispin Hartwell sat at his table with a new cup of coffee. He rose when they approached. "Your Grace." It was said softly. Not an accusation, a simple nod. "Lord Hartwell." "I did not know it was you until this morning. May I congratulate you on your very recent marriage." "Thank you." "Mrs. Vane and I were only becoming acquainted. She has been gracious. I am sure she has." Cressida stood at Alaric's elbow and watched the two men speak in the code of people who had already understood everything and were content to pretend otherwise. Some species of contract was being written in the civil spaces between their sentences, and it was being signed. "My own business in London is not urgent," Crispin said, "and I understand the post road south will be some days clearing. If you and your lady permit, I should be very glad to keep you company on the journey when we move. The lanes are not as safe as they were last year." "One hears many things," said Alaric. "Shall we say, settled? Shall we?" "I am obliged." It was nothing that could be refused. To refuse was to admit there was anything worth refusing. Alaric inclined his head a quarter of an inch. Cressida inclined hers. Crispin sat down again. Alaric guided her away with a hand on the small of her back that was, for the first time since she had known him, not formal at all. When they reached the stair, he did not take the step. He stood quite still, and she understood that he could not trust his face to be seen by any room in the house. "Upstairs," he said. "Now, please." They did not take supper in the common room. Alaric had a private parlor opened up by the innkeeper by the simple expedient of paying for it, and the chop and the potatoes and the cold ham were brought to them on a table no larger than a card table, and they ate in a silence that was worse than any conversation they had yet had. Crispin Hartwell came to the parlor door an hour after sunset with a book in his hand. "I beg your pardon," he said. "The common room is dense with cavalry, and I cannot hear myself turn a page. I wonder whether I might presume upon a corner of your parlor, only to read." There was no refusing it that would not have been a confession. Alaric lifted his head half an inch in assent. Crispin sat in the far chair by the smaller fire with his book upon his knee and his candle beside him, and he did not once raise his eyes from the page for the rest of the meal. He did not need to. His presence was the point. Cressida ate what she could. Alaric spoke to her in a low, ordinary voice about the condition of the roads and the state of the horses, as though they were two people in the middle of their own lives. She marveled, distantly, at his control. She said, after a long while, "The potatoes are very good." And then, a moment later, "I have not had a proper potato in 3 days, and I am becoming a convert." She had surprised herself. She had surprised him. He looked at her. He almost did not smile back. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved exactly the distance of a hair. She looked away at once, at the fire, at the wall, at anything, because if she had let him answer, she thought she would have laughed, and she could not bear to laugh in the room in which Crispin Hartwell was turning the pages of a book too slowly. When the meal was cleared and the fire had sunk, Alaric rose and said in the same voice, "My wife is very tired, if you will excuse us." "Of course," said Crispin without looking up. In the bedroom with the door shut, Cressida sat on the edge of the bed and at last put her face into her hands. "He's not going to go away." "No. He will ride with us. He will find out all of it. He will tell my brother. He will tell everyone. He will do nothing yet." "Why nothing?" Alaric took off his coat and laid it over the chair. He stood with his back to her for a moment. "Because he is not a man who makes gifts," he said. "He is a man who keeps accounts. He will keep this knowledge until he wants something for it." "Wants what?" Alaric turned. "You." She laughed, a small, helpless laugh, which became, to her horror, a sound nearer a sob. "Me. He saw me once, at Penrose Court, in a corridor. Not you, Cressida, what you carry." She stopped laughing. "His brother died in April," Alaric said. "The estate at Crowhill came to him. I heard of it in London. It is mortgaged to 3 banks and a private lender I would not name in a lady's hearing. He has a year, perhaps 18 months, to find a wife with money of her own before the creditors come. Your mother left you the Abercorn lands. It was announced in the papers in July. Your brother believed you did not read them." She stared at him. "How do you know what I read?" "I know what you read." The room was too warm. The fire had eaten itself into coals, and yet the room was too warm. She had to set her teeth to keep her face still. "He is not interested in you. He is interested in a solvent bride, whose brother is a friend of his, whom society would not question. He has come for you, because there is no one else, and time presses. Maybe he does see me. He does not. You do not know. I do know, because I have been watching you for 7 years, and I have watched other men watch you, and I have learned, Cressida, by great attention, what it looks like when a man sees you, and what it looks like when a man sees your situation, and Hartwell is the second kind, and he is very practiced at it." Silence. 7 years, she said. 7 years. She stood up from the bed. She did not mean to. Her feet took her. She stopped a pace from him because one more step would have been another thing entirely, and laid her hand, flat against his sleeve. "What younger brother?" she said. She had not forgotten the question. She had asked it in her mind 100 times since he had left her in this room to eat alone the night before. He did not move. He did not look down at her hand. He looked at the fire. "His name was Edmund," he said. "He was 7. I was 13. It was February. The fever came on a Tuesday, and he was gone by the Sabbath. Nobody had told me the physician at Westvale existed. I have never forgiven myself for that, and I have never told another human being what I have just told you." She did not speak. She could not for a little time. Then she said, very quietly, "Why me?" "Because I am tired of not telling you." Her hand stayed where it was. His sleeve was very warm. He did not step away. Neither did she. "Alaric." "Cressida." The room did not move. Neither did they. The hand on his sleeve had stopped being, in any polite sense, a hand on a sleeve. After a very long moment, he stepped back, carefully, as a man might step off a cliff he had not known he stood upon, and turned away, and said without looking at her, "The floor, I think, again tonight." He did not take his coat from the chair to use as a blanket. He lay down with nothing over him at all. She understood that he had done it because he wished the cold to keep him on the floor and not on the bed. She lay awake in the dark for a long time, and she understood it, and she did not speak. She did not hear him move. She only knew, in the middle of some hour without name, that the bed had got warmer, that the cold which had seeped under the window had been met by another heat at her back. An arm lay, very carefully, across her waist, the weight of it unbearable and small at once. He was not awake. She knew by his breath. It was deep, slow, the breath of a man whose body had betrayed his will at last, and was taking what his will would not let him ask for. She should have moved. She should have struck his arm away, or turned, or risen, and fetched a candle, and wakened him with such noise that he would remember himself. She did none of these things. She lay still, and she did not move, and after a little while she slept, more deeply than she had slept in months, because for the first time in many months, there was another human being at her back whom she did not, at that moment, wish to pretend to be well in front of. Dawn came gray and damp as all the dawns had come. She woke because a floorboard creaked in the passage outside. She knew, before her eyes were open, that she was still where she had been, that he was still where he had been, that his breath was now stirring the hair at her temple, that his hand had sometime in the night moved from her waist to lie splayed very gently across the front of her dress, just below her ribs. He woke, she felt it, in the same instant that she did. He went rigid. "Miss Merriweather. Alaric, I beg your pardon. Do not. I was cold. I am not excusing. I am sorry. Do not move yet." She had not meant to say it. She had heard herself say it. He had gone so still she could not hear him breathe. "Cressida, another minute, please. Only that." It was scandalous. It was unforgivable. It was the only honest thing she had said in 3 days. He did not move for the minute she had asked for. At the end of it, precisely and without speaking, he drew his arm away and rose and crossed the room and stood at the washstand, with his back to her. There was a knock on the door. Cressida sat up. Her hair was down. Her dress was crumpled. The bed bore, quite plainly, the impressions of 2 bodies that had slept in it. The serving girl came in with a breakfast tray. She stopped 1 step inside the door. She looked at the bed. She looked at Alaric at the washstand in his shirt sleeves. She looked at Cressida in the bed. She did not look at any of them again. She set the tray down with great care upon the chair, because there was no room upon the table, and she dropped a curtsy so sudden and so deep it was almost a stumble, and she said to the floor, "Begging the mistress's pardon, I shall come back." And she was gone. The door closed. Cressida heard her feet in the passage, very fast. Alaric, at the washstand, did not turn. "Well," he said, "that is that." She went down alone an hour later, because she could not breathe in the room. Alaric had offered to come with her. She had asked, very quietly, to be given an hour. He had not pressed. She went not into the common room, but into the little covered gallery that ran along the back of the inn and gave on to the garden wall. It was empty. It was cold. She stood there with her forehead against a pane of glass and watched the rain drip from the edge of the slate above and tried to think nothing. Mrs. Vane. She closed her eyes. Lord Hartwell. He had come in without her hearing. He stood a respectful yard away. He did not smile. "I shall not keep you. I saw you come from the passage, and I thought I should be brief. The maid who brought your breakfast has just spent the better part of a quarter hour in the kitchen, explaining to her mistress why she was sent back for the tray. The mistress of this house has 3 daughters, and is a woman of strict views. It is not my business. It is not even, If we are candid with one another, yours. But it is going to be someone's business by the end of the day, and I thought you should know." She did not turn from the glass. "What do you want? I beg your pardon. You have come down a corridor in a public inn to tell me that a serving girl has gossiped in a kitchen. You might have left me to discover it. You did not. So what do you want?" He did not answer at once. She turned at last. He was looking at her with the same kindness as before, only now she saw quite clearly that it was a thing he put on each morning as another man would put on a cravat. "I am a friend," he said, "of your brother. I am a man who wishes you very well. I should like an opportunity to call upon you at Merryweather Grange when you are safely returned. That is the whole of what I want today. Tomorrow we may speak of other things. A man who becomes the steady and devoted friend of a lady whose situation is, let us say, irregular, is very often the means by which that irregularity is made invisible. Nobody will speak against you if nobody has cause. And if I refused, you will not refuse, because by tomorrow evening, when the road clears, the whole of this county will know that the Duke of Ashmore shared a bed at the Hollow Bell with a young lady of your brother's house, and the only question any person will ask is whether he intends to do the honorable thing by you. I shall be very happy, if you permit me to call, to be the first to tell them all that he does not, and to present myself in his stead. Your brother is a sensible man. He will see the arithmetic of it." She said nothing. She could not think of a single word that would not break something further. He bowed. He did not smile. He went back down the gallery. She found she could not move for a long count. When she opened the door of their room, Alaric was standing in the middle of it, and he saw her face and said, before he had thought about whether he should, "Cressida." He said her name like that again, like a man who had just let go of a stone he had not meant to drop, and for a single breath neither of them moved. "What has happened?" "He came to the gallery. He found me there." She told him. She told him all of it. The maid in the kitchen, the county knowing by tomorrow, the proposal that was not a proposal, the arithmetic Hartwell wanted her brother to see. She did not sit down. She did not weep. She had been weeping quietly for an hour in the gallery, and it had left her out of tears in the way a well runs dry. Alaric listened. When she had finished, he said only, he named the hour. "By the end of the day," he said. "He will not move tonight because the road is under. Tomorrow we shall all be traveling. Tomorrow we shall see what the counties think of us." Alaric stood in the middle of the room for a long count. Then he said, in a voice that had gone perfectly flat, "He will come to me next. How do you know?" "Because he will want the price from me separately. He is a man who will take from both sides if he can. From you, the marriage. From me, a sum. It is how men like him have always worked. What will you do?" He did not answer. He went to the small table by the window and laid both hands upon it, and she saw his shoulders rise and fall twice before he could speak at all. "I do not know." The confession of it, of the words "I do not know," from a man who had spent 7 years issuing orders to servants and steering his father's estates, shook her almost more than any of the rest. She crossed the room in 2 steps and put her hand on his arm, and this time she did not pull it away, and neither did he. "Alaric." "Yes." "Tell me what you cannot tell him." He laughed without a smile. "That is a larger question than the one we have." "Then begin with the smaller." He turned his head. He did not look at her. He looked at their 2 hands on the table, hers over his. "I cannot offer you what you believe I can. If I had ever been in a position to ask anything of you, I should have asked long before now. I was ill once, Cressida, 8 years ago. A fever that nearly took me, and did take other things I will not name in this room. There are matters of a future that I was told, very plainly, I could not expect. The physician my father sent for was the best man in London. He was certain. He gave me a fortnight to consider what he had said, and then he came back, and he was certain again. Lady Sibylla was chosen because her uncle's estate does not require them. Her family's wealth passes through a cousin. The match was designed so that no one should ever have to ask me for what I cannot give. Do you understand what I am saying to you? She did not answer at once. I think I do, she said. I did not wish you to know. Why? Because it is not a thing a man wishes a woman to pity him for. And because the only honest thing I could ever have offered you would have been the truth of it, and I wasn't until this week brave enough to say it aloud in a room in which the roof was my own, never mind a room whose roof belongs to a stranger. I do not pity you. Do you not? No. I am only sorry. That is a different thing. And I am angry with the physician, which is, I suspect, a thing you are not permitted to be. It had not occurred to me, he said, to be angry with him. It is difficult to be angry with a man one has spent 8 years believing. Perhaps it is time. He made a sound somewhere in his throat. He did not take his hand from beneath hers. There is a knock coming, he said. I have not heard one. It is coming. He will have given us an hour. It has been an hour. She listened. Below them a door opened and closed, a tread on the stair that was not the innkeeper's, nor the maid's, because it did not hurry. A tread that came up the stairs at the exact pace of a man who knew he would be received. 3 soft raps at their door. Alaric drew his hand from under hers. He did it without looking at her. Sit there, please, he said, and do not speak. Whatever you hear, I shall not be long. She sat. He opened the door. Crispin Hartwell was on the landing, hat in hand, as cordial as a cousin come to call. Your Grace, a private word, if you will. Downstairs, the parlor is empty. You are most obliging. They went. She heard their 2 pairs of boots upon the stair, and then the door of the parlor closing below. She sat in the chair Alaric had left her in. She sat for 20 minutes. She sat for 25. She counted the rain off the sill. She counted the knots in the floorboards. She counted her own breaths, and when she lost count, she began again. The step came back up. Only his. The door opened. He had gone very pale under his eyes. He closed the door very carefully behind him, as if the wood were glass. Well, she said, he wants £3,000, to be paid through a solicitor in London within a fortnight. In exchange, he will conduct himself, and I quote, as a gentleman ought. £3,000. That is not the whole. No. He wants, when the road clears tomorrow, that I should ride ahead alone to London upon some urgent matter, leaving you at the next coaching inn under his protection, which he will represent to all the county as a rescue of a young lady from a scandalous situation. From that inn, he will escort you to your brother's estate. He will then apply to your brother for leave to court you. He says he is confident your brother will not refuse. And if you refuse his terms, he will stand at a table in the common room tomorrow morning, after the maid has told everybody in the kitchen, and he will inform any traveler who asks him that the Duke of Ashmore has shared a room 3 nights with the unmarried sister of Tobias Merryweather, and has now returned to London to be married to another woman. He says he believes the news will travel faster than we will. She sat very still. She felt a thing inside her chest go to pieces very quietly, in a way that no one else in the room could have heard. How long have we? Until the road opens. He believes we shall move by tomorrow evening. We have tonight. Yes. He was not looking at her when he said it. He did not need to. The room had gone very still. Somewhere in the inn beneath them a chair was scraped across boards. A drover laughed, the ordinary noises of a house that did not know that upstairs a thing was ending and another was beginning. Cressida rose from the chair. What are we to do? I do not know. Alaric. I do not know, Cressida. I have spent my life knowing. I have never in my life been required not to know. If you would sit down, I could think. I cannot sit down. Neither, it appears, can I? He did not move. He did not turn. He stood where he had stood, with his hand upon the door behind him, as though he might fall through it if he released the latch. She crossed the space between them. She did not hurry. She put her hands, both of them, flat against the front of his waistcoat, and he did not move away. "Listen," she said. "I am listening. You said you could not offer me a future. I did say that. Then offer me this instead." He closed his eyes. "Cressida, I am not asking for the rest of your life. I am asking for the rest of tonight. You do not know what you ask. I know exactly what I ask. You told me an hour ago you have been watching me for 7 years. I have not watched you for 7 years, Alaric. I have spent 7 years deciding, at great effort, not to watch you. I have watched you in spite of that effort. I have watched you when you were rude to me, and I have watched you when you thought I was not in the room, and I have hated you very hard because hating you was easier than understanding what watching you was costing me. Now we have until tomorrow. You may tell me to go back to my chair, and I shall go. But I will not go because you imagine it is what is best for me. You will have to tell me to go because it is what is best for you. And I think you will not be able to tell me that. Because for the first time in our acquaintance, we want the same thing." He did not speak. He had not opened his eyes. "Alaric." "Yes." "Tell me to go back to my chair." A very long moment. She could feel his heart through her palms. "I cannot." "Then tell me to stay." "Stay." She did not move her hands. Her forehead came to rest, very lightly, against his jaw. "I do not know what I'm doing," she said. "Nor I." "Is that not rather reassuring? Do not make me smile now, Cressida. I will lose what is left of my courage. What little courage requires, my lord, is perhaps not courage. Do not call me my lord." "Alaric." "Yes." She lifted her face. She had kissed a boy once, on a dare, at 16, a cousin at a summer party. It had been dry and brief, and she had wondered for an hour afterward why the poets bothered. This was not that. This was a man whose whole being had been held at arm's length from hers for 7 years, and who was, in the space of one slow indrawn breath, letting go. His hands came up to her shoulders, and then, as if he could not stop them, around her. He was not a gentle man. He had never been a gentle man. But he was, she discovered, in this instant, careful. Careful with her jaw, careful with the small place at the back of her neck, careful even with the ribbon of her dress as he touched it, because careful was all he had left. She did not want careful. She did not want careful at all. When she made him understand that, the careful broke. Not all at once, in pieces. A hand no longer quite steady at her waist, his mouth losing its politeness, a stepping backward that was also a pulling of her with him, until the edge of the bed struck the back of her knees, and she sat down, and he, after one last suspended breath, went down with her. There was, later, a candle that burnt itself out. There was the sound of rain upon the window, which she had hated for 3 days, and which now bore its kindly witness. There was his voice at some hour in the dark, saying her name like a prayer and like a sentence against himself. There was the moment when she put her hand against his cheek and felt tears on her fingers, and did not say so, because he would have been shamed, and there was nothing she could do for the shame but offer him her mouth again. There was, most of all, the long silence afterward, when they lay together in a bed that had held strangers yesterday, and had held them tonight, and would hold strangers again the day after tomorrow. Her hair was down, his shirt was undone, his arm was heavy across her ribs. Neither spoke for a long time. "Alaric." "Yes. I should like very much, tomorrow, not to have to be brave." "I know." I do not wish to pretend I have not known you. You will not have to. Not with me. Never with me. And with everybody else. With everybody else, yes. For a little while. I am sorry. Do not be sorry. Not tonight. Tonight is mine. Tomorrow you may be as sorry as you please, and I shall not ask why. He was silent for a long time. She thought he might have fallen asleep. Then she felt his mouth move at the top of her hair. I love you, he said. She had not expected him to say it. She had not known, until he said it, that she had been waiting 7 years to hear it. Yes, she said. I know, Alaric. Don't answer. Don't make me answerable for it in the morning. I only wanted you to have heard it said once, by me, in a room where nobody could pretend otherwise. I shall carry it. Yes. He was quiet for a while. She thought he really was near sleep. She did not wish him to sleep, but she would not wake him. He had carried a very great weight for a very long time, and the weight had gone down for an hour, and the putting down of it had made him tired in a way she had not before permitted herself to see. She smoothed her hand along the inside of his wrist, where the pulse was, and felt it slow, and made herself content with the fact of it. Cressida, you are not asleep. No, I was trying to be. Why? Because if I sleep, I shall wake, and if I wake, this will be over, and I am not ready for it to be over. Then don't sleep. I cannot remain awake all night. You can try. I can try. She smiled against his shoulder. He did not see the smile. She did not mind. She had smiled so little in the last year that the smile itself was for her, not for him. The rain had gentled. Somewhere beyond the window, the wind had shifted, and she understood without needing to be told that the weather was turning. That tomorrow the road would clear. That the inn would be only an inn again, and the cavalry would ride out, and Hartwell would ride out, and they would ride out, and at the end of the day she would be in her brother's house, and Alaric would be on the London road alone. She did not weep for it. She had no tears left of that kind. She turned her face into the hollow of his shoulder, and she listened to his heartbeat, and she memorized it, because she had understood by then, quite clearly, that there would not be another night. She committed to memory also the smell of his shirt, the weight of his arm across her waist, and the way his fingers moved when he was nearly asleep against the bone of her wrist, as though counting something only he could count. The weather turned in the small hours. She knew by the change in the sound of the gutters. She did not sleep again. She lay with her cheek against Alaric's shoulder and did not close her eyes, because she had promised herself this night, and did not intend to lose any of it to sleep she would not remember. He woke at first light. She felt it in him before he moved. He was always so ordered, so careful of a day beginning, and the care of it came into him even before his eyes opened. He did not speak. She did not either. He lay a while with her, and then he rose, and she understood by the way he rose, not looking at her, that the night had ended not at dawn, but at the first shifting of his shoulders. He washed at the washstand, with his back to her. He dressed without looking at the bed. He said to the window, in a voice he had put carefully back in its polite place, "The road will clear by midday. I have asked Harmsworth to have the horses put to at noon." She sat up. She did not cover herself with the sheet. She would not permit him that kindness this morning. Alaric. Miss Merriweather. It struck her like a blow between the ribs. Do not call me that. Not after. Miss Merriweather, it is what you shall be called by every person who enters a room with you for the rest of your life, and I will not be the man who made you briefly think otherwise. If you permit me the small courtesy of the correct name, it will be easier for us both. Is that what it is? A courtesy? It is what has to be. She dressed in silence. He had gone down to see to the horses by the time she was done. When she came into the common room, He was already settling the account with the innkeeper, courteous and brief, and Crispin Hartwell was waiting by the fire with a small portmanteau at his feet. They rode 3 in the carriage. Hartwell was pleasant the entire journey. He spoke of his brother's house at Crowhill, of his late mother's fondness for Italian opera, of a horse he had recently acquired. Alaric answered when addressed. Cressida did not. The coaching inn at Ashbridge, 15 miles distant, was where Alaric would continue alone. He did. He did not bow over her hand. He touched his hat to her at the foot of the steps. Miss Merriweather. Lord Hartwell. He was gone in 10 minutes. Hartwell's manners for the remainder of the journey were impeccable. He delivered her to the door of Merriweather Grange at dusk. Her brother Tobias came out of the house before the footman had set the steps. She had never seen him look so much like their father. Rosie. Tobias. Who? He said to Hartwell, in the level tone of a man who had been walking about a house all day, with a piece of broken glass turning in his chest. Was with you on the road. The Duke of Ashmore saw me safely to Ashbridge, she said, before Hartwell could answer. Lord Hartwell carried me the remainder. You may come in, Tobias said to Hartwell. I have a good deal to thank you for, I understand. I am only a friend who was at hand. Cressida did not look at her brother that night. She could not bear his face. She sat with him the next morning in the library and heard, without weeping, his decision that she was to go to her Aunt Augusta's house outside Harrogate directly, that he would write ahead tonight, that she was to stay through the spring, and that she was not, under any circumstance, to communicate with the Duke of Ashmore. She went without arguing. The weeks at her Aunt Augusta's were not unkind. Aunt Augusta did not ask. She poured tea, and walked in the rose garden, and said at intervals, My dear, when you wish to speak of it, I shall be here. And Cressida did not wish to speak of it, because she did not yet have words for the thing that had begun in the 3rd week to make itself plain in her body. It was a maid who said it first, gently, because the maid had a sister, married a 12-month, and recognized the signs. Cressida knew by the middle of the 4th week. She knew by the way her dresses no longer fastened at the side. She knew. She told no one. She wrote no letter. She thought for a week about what a woman was to do, and she did not arrive at any answer. And then on a Tuesday morning in the 7th week, a carriage came up the lane that she knew at once, by its arms, wasn't her brother's. Aunt Augusta came to the morning room. My dear, she said, there is a caller. I am not receiving. You will wish to receive this one. She went. She did not ask who. Alaric Vane was standing in the small sitting room at the end of the hall. He had not taken his coat off. He had not taken his hat off either. He held it in both hands as though it weighed more than a hat ought to weigh. I sent no word, he said. I did not know how to. I have ended the arrangement with Lady Sibylla. Her uncle will have my head in any London drawing room I enter for the next 12 months. I do not care. I have come to ask you to forgive me. She did not move. I did not think you should come, she said. Nor did I. For 7 weeks I did not think I should come. Today, I think I should have come before. She did not trust her voice. She swallowed. Alaric. Yes. I am with child. The room went quite still. He did not move. His hand, which had been turning the brim of the hat, stopped turning it. His face did not change for a moment, and then it went, very simply, the color of the linen at the washstand. That, he said, is impossible. She had imagined his face 100 ways since the 4th week. She had not imagined it pale. She had not imagined his hands going slack upon the brim of the hat, and the hat itself falling to the floor without his seeming to notice it had gone. Impossible. Yes. It is yours. Yes. I said yes. I know you did. I am saying it to you also. It is yours. There's been no other. There has never been any other. He sat down. He did it before he had quite worked out where to sit. The chair caught him. He put a hand to his mouth and sat with it there for a count of breaths. "Forgive me," he said at last. "Alaric, I'm asking you to forgive me a word before I have said it. Forgive me, Cressida. It is not that I doubt you. It is not. Please hear me. It is that for 8 years I have believed a thing a physician said to me in a London house after a fever, in a tone he did not choose by chance, and my whole life has been constructed upon that belief. If the stone is a lie, I do not at this moment know what else I have built upon a lie. Alaric, let me finish. I will not doubt this child. I have said already that I do not. I will name it my heir before the whole of Parliament, if Parliament will have me to speak. I only ask that you permit me, for the space of this one afternoon, to be more stunned than a gentleman ought, because 8 years is a long time to think a thing and to arrange a life around thinking it." She crossed the room. She sat down opposite him. She put her hand on his knee. She did not speak, because there was nothing to say that would say more than her hand. He put his own hand over hers and closed his eyes. "I have ended with Sibylla," he said. "You know that. My brother wrote me a fortnight ago informing me of it. He did not tell me kindly. He informed me because he wished me to understand that you would be a poorer match than you had been 6 weeks ago. Your brother. He has heard something. Not all of it. A paragraph in a London paper. A man of our class, and a young lady of a house near Penrose Court, at an inn in weather that had not been snow. No names yet. Names will come. Hartwell. It will be Hartwell." He rose. He did not put his hat back on. He left it lying at his feet. "I will handle Hartwell. Alaric, sit down. There is more. More. My brother comes for me tomorrow. He has arranged passage on a ship out of Liverpool. There is a cousin of ours with a house on the west of Ireland. I am to go there for my confinement under the name of a widow." Alaric went very still. "He will not. He will. And he is not wrong. In his arithmetic, he is entirely correct. I am a woman carrying the child of a man she cannot marry, whose name will ruin her if spoken, and the kindest thing he believes he can do for me is to send me away." He crossed to her. He knelt. He did not touch her. He put his hands, palms down, upon her knees, where the fabric of her skirt lay smooth. "Cressida, look at me." She looked at him. "I will go now. I will ride from here to London, and I will go first to Crowhill, and I will make Hartwell wish he had never heard your name, and I will then go to your brother. And I will not speak to your brother as a friend, because he has ceased to be a friend the moment he bought passage for his sister out of her own country. I will return here in 3 days. Do not go to Liverpool. Do not put on the ship. Wait. Wait for me 3 days. If I am not here by the dusk of the 3rd day, I have failed, and you may do as your brother wishes, and I shall not blame you. But until the dusk of the 3rd day, wait. Alaric, promise me. I promise you. Say it again. I promise you, Alaric. 3 days." He closed his eyes for the first time since he had entered the room, and she saw how tired he was, and how lately afraid, and she understood that he had not slept on the road up from London, and that he had not known, until he knocked at her aunt's door, whether she would receive him or turn him away. "There is one thing more," he said. "Yes. I did not come here to offer you marriage because of the child. The child I did not know of an hour ago. I came here because I have not been able to live these 7 weeks inside a life in which I pretended not to have told you what I told you in that room. I wish that understood before I go, because when I come back, I shall be asking you in front of other people, and I should like you to know I was asking before I was asked." She could not speak for a moment. "I know it, Alaric. Say you know it. I know it." He kissed her hand then, He did not kiss her mouth. He picked up his hat, and he walked out of the sitting room and past her Aunt Augusta, who had been, she now realized, standing in the hall for some minutes, and he was down the steps and into his carriage before she had risen from the chair. Aunt Augusta came in. "Well," said Aunt Augusta, in the voice of a woman who had heard every word and intended to mention none of it. "That is a man in a hurry. He will come back. My dear, I do not doubt he will try. You heard. I heard. I shall not speak of it. Your brother arrives tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. I shall tell him, when he comes, that you have taken a chill and cannot travel. That will give him 1 day. I do not know what I shall tell him on the second, but I shall think of something. My dear, sit down. I am going to ring for brandy, because we have earned it, and I am 72 years of age, and do not require a physician's permission." She rang for brandy. Cressida sat where she had been sitting, with her hand pressed to her middle where the child lay, and she listened to the wheels of Alaric's carriage going down the lane, and she did not weep, because for the first time in 7 weeks, she was not alone. Tobias arrived at 10, as promised. Aunt Augusta met him in the hall with the practiced manner of a woman who had once been a great beauty in a difficult season, and knew every face a difficult truth could wear. A chill, she told him. A cough. The physician was of a firm opinion that a journey would be a folly. Tobias accepted, reluctantly, that he would remain at his aunt's for the night and consider the morning. The first day passed without word from London. The second day passed. Cressida sat at the window of the morning room from first light on the third day, and did not leave it. Her brother thought she was watching for sparrows. At 3:30 in the afternoon, when she had counted 100 carriages going by on the Harrogate Road, and none of them turning in, she permitted herself to admit, quietly, that she had been right to be afraid. At 5:10, in the failing winter light, a carriage turned into the drive. It was not his. It was an old traveling coach she knew at once by the arms upon its door. Lord Marchmere, Alaric's father, stepped down and helped himself up the drive upon the arm of a footman, and Tobias, who had been in the library, came out into the hall to see who had come. Cressida stood up. Aunt Augusta came into the morning room. "My dear, there is Lord Marchmere in my hall. He is asking to see you, and he has your brother with him, and he has a great deal of color in his face, and I do not know which of you he wishes to strangle first. Alaric. Not at present, my dear." She went down. She went into the hall. Lord Marchmere was a small, gray-haired man whom she had met twice, and she had never before seen him angry, and she understood in one glance that this was what he looked like when he was. Her brother stood at his elbow, and her brother's face was a worse thing, because it had no anger in it at all. It had only grief. "Miss Merryweather," said Lord Marchmere, "my lord, I have come, at my son's request, from London, in a carriage at my age, in February. I should like that understood. My son has ended a match upon which I had bent the last 4 years of my influence. My son has today, before 20 men in a club in St. James, declared that he intends to marry a young woman whose name I shall not at present use, because I am not certain what I may say. Do you understand me?" "I believe I do, my lord." "Where is he?" said her brother, very quietly. "I do not know. He said 3 days. The third day is not done." "He is a day behind," said Lord Marchmere. "The road from Crowhill in February is not a road. I am not surprised at his being a day behind." "Crowhill." Lord Marchmere looked at her. "He went to Crowhill. He said he would." Good God. Lord Marchmere sat down upon the hall chair without waiting to be invited. Hartwell is a crack shot. Did he know Hartwell is a crack shot? He did not at any point say the word shot to me, my lord. "I'm going to need your brandy, madam," said Lord Marchmere to Aunt Augusta, "and I am going to need it now. They were all four of them in the small sitting room, with brandy at an hour when decent people did not drink brandy, when the wheels came up the drive. Cressida heard them. She had been hearing them in her mind for 3 days. She ran. She did not wait for the door to be opened. She opened it herself. Alaric was coming up the steps with his hat in his hand and his left arm strapped against his chest beneath his coat, and he was smiling, of all things, and his father behind her in the hall made a sound she did not pause to interpret. "You are late," she said. "I am sorry. You are bleeding." A little only. It is my shoulder. Hartwell is a better shot than I am, but I am a better man than he is, which appears, in the final accounting, to have counted for more. Alaric. He is on a ship out of Bristol by morning. The debts are past saving. He will not come back. I told him, if he came back, I should not be so civil a second time, and he believed it. "You are a fool," she said. "Yes." "A complete fool." "Yes." "Come in before my aunt's neighbors see a duke bleeding on her steps." He came in. He did not look at his father. He did not look at her brother. He looked at her. He went down upon one knee in the hall, left arm in its sling, hat on the floor beside him, and in front of his father, and her brother, and her Aunt Augusta, and the footman and the cook, who had come from the kitchen with a wooden spoon still in her hand. He said, "Miss Merriweather, I have loved you for 7 years. I did not tell you, because I believed I could not give you a life complete. I have learned this week that I was wrong about several things, of which that was the most important, and that my whole life, which I had believed to be arranged according to my duty, was in fact arranged according to my cowardice. I should like, very much, to be permitted to marry you. I do not ask it of your brother. I ask it of you. The rest I shall manage." She could not speak for a moment. "What of your father, Alaric?" "My father is behind you in the hall." "What of the settlement? What of the alliance?" "All of it is done. I ended it upon the floor of a club in St. James on Tuesday afternoon. I was not polite. I spoke across a billiard table to a man I had known since I was 14, and I told him I had been a fool, and was to be a fool no longer. My father was in the next room. My father came out and said that he would meet me in Harrogate in 3 days, if I had the courage by then to be met. Lord Marchmere, from the sitting-room doorway, made a small, harsh sound that she understood, after a moment, was neither disapproval nor agreement. It was something nearer laughter, at the end of a day upon which laughter should not have been possible. "My lord," she said without turning. "What do you say?" Lord Marchmere set down his brandy glass upon her aunt's hall table. He looked at his son, on the floor, bleeding through his coat, in front of a cook with a wooden spoon. He looked, then, at her. "Miss Merriweather," he said, "I am 71 years of age. I have spent 4 of those years trying to marry my son to a woman whose uncle's estate my family has coveted since the reign of the present king's grandfather. I am not a man given to sentiment. I am, however, a man who recognizes when I have lost. Make him happy, if you are able. I shall see to the rest. The rest is not a small consideration. It is 25 years of drawing rooms that shall be closed to my son, and opened to him in the order that my signature upon a note demands. I am equal to it. He is my son. He has today done the only thing I have ever asked him to do, which is to refuse a thing he could not bear." "Tobias," she said. "Rosie, please." Her brother was silent for a long count. Then he said, to Alaric, not to her, "If you make her weep, I shall do worse to you than Hartwell." "Understood," said Alaric, still on his knee. "Yes," said Tobias, "you may have her." "Thank you," said Alaric. "Get up, you idiot. You're bleeding on my aunt's floor." There was, of course, a scandal. Scandals were in those years reliable as the weather. Hartwell from his ship posted letters to 2 columnists in London. One was respectable and suppressed the matter. One was not, and did not. Miss M, of a fine old family, and a duke of the northern country, and an inn near Ashbridge, in a reign that had not been rain, were the subjects of a paragraph that ran the length of a month. The paragraph was answered, in the end, by a small and very careful announcement in the court pages of 2 papers that the Duke of Ashmore had, upon the 3rd of March, married Miss Cressida Merryweather of Merryweather Grange at the private chapel of his father, Lord Marchmere, his only sister, Lady Honoria Penrose, and the bride's brother Tobias Merryweather present. The paragraph was answered a second time, and more effectively, when the young Duchess of Ashmore walked at her husband's elbow into a dinner at a house in Berkeley Square in her 7th month, and was received by Lord Marchmere, who had arrived an hour earlier for that precise purpose, and who kissed his son's wife upon the forehead before the collected drawing-room. The paragraph stopped then. Paragraphs could not survive fathers who kissed foreheads. Lady Sibylla Pembridge was married by Michaelmas to a man of her own choosing whom her uncle had not approved, and whom her uncle accepted when it was explained to him, kindly by Lord Marchmere, that the matter was closed, and he might take what was on offer or take the heir. Sibylla wrote Cressida a short and unexpectedly warm note. They were not friends, but they were no longer, either of them, required to pretend to be. Tobias came to visit Ashmore Abbey at Christmas, and stayed until 12th night, and he and Alaric did not speak of the thing that had passed between them on the hall floor of their aunt's house in Harrogate, and both were glad not to. The child was born in May, in a room at Ashmore Abbey that looked out upon a south-facing garden that was, that week, full of lilacs. He was healthy. He was very loud. He was a vain through and through, Lady Honoria said, on the first day she met him, except that he had his mother's mouth, which was, she added, the best of possible developments for a man of his future. They named him Edmund. Alaric wept when the child was placed in his arms, though he would always afterward deny it, and Cressida, who did not mind being the one who remembered, did not press the point. 2 autumns later, in a hallway at Ashmore Abbey in the last hour of daylight, in a rain that had come in from the west, Cressida stood at the tall window and watched the color drain from the lawn, and Alaric came up behind her and put his hand at the small of her back, with his thumb at the place where he had first laid it in an inn parlor, in another life, to steady her out of a room in which a ruin had been sitting with a coffee. "Wool-gathering," he said, remembering. "What? The rain?" "Ah, the rain and the road and the bridge and the bed. The bed especially. Alaric, I am a married man. I may say bed in my own hall. Scandalous. Deeply." She leaned back against him. "Do you know what I was thinking?" "I never know what you are thinking." "I was thinking that you said to me, the first night, that I had no choice, that the inn was the only roof, and the room the only room, and the bed the only bed. Do you remember? Every word of it. You were wrong. I had a choice. I know. I could have sat upon the floor. I could have refused to let you call me your wife. I could have refused to speak to you the second day. I could have refused to let you onto the bed that night. I could have refused you, Alaric, 100 times, and I did not. And it was not because I had no choice. It was because I had chosen. When? The first night. The minute you caught me when the carriage pitched. I did not know it then. I knew only that something had gone wrong inside my ribs. But that was when. I believe I had chosen the first dinner at your brother's house. You spoke of it afterward as though you had hated me on sight. I had. I am confused. I hated you, Cressida, because I had looked across a room and understood that there was nothing I could do about you for the rest of my life, and I was not a man who tolerated things he could not do anything about. The hatred was, in the event, only the shape of it. That is poetry. Do not tell anyone. Only the nurse, perhaps. The nurse does not require poetry. The nurse requires to be permitted to take the baby from me when I am trying to work and the baby wishes to be climbed upon. You would rather be climbed upon. Always. She turned in his arms. She put her hands, both of them, flat against the front of his waistcoat. Alaric. Cressida. The rain. The rain. I shall tell him when he is older. About the rain. I shall tell him it brought him. I shall tell him it brought us. I shall tell him a storm left his mother no choice, and his mother made in that storm every choice she has been glad of since. He did not answer at once. He had his face at her hair, and when he spoke, his voice was not quite level. Tell him, he said, that the storm left her all the choice in the world, and that she chose a fool, and that the fool spent the rest of his days trying to be worth it. I shall tell him no such thing. Tell him a better version of me, then. I shall tell him the true version. Worse. Better, my love. Better. Thank you for traveling these miles with Cressida, and with Alaric, from an inn called the Hollow Bell, through a rain nobody remembered the equal of, to a hallway in a house where a child was sleeping upstairs. Their story opened with a door that closed behind them because there was nowhere else to go. It closes, as all true stories do, with a door that opens outward, onto a life they chose, and chose, and chose again. If there is someone in your life to whom you have been watching from a distance, you told yourself was required, may you find your own rain, your own inn, your own courage to stay 1 minute longer than politeness permits. And if you have not yet subscribed, please do, and ring the bell, because there are more stories on the way, more long roads, more rain, more rooms with only one bed. Thank you for listening.